Welcome to Food Literacy for All. If this is your first time, welcome for the first time. And if you are returning, thank you for coming back. This week we have a really interesting and important discussion. And as always, we would like to thank our supporters. This class is co-led by, is co-led. Okay, thank you. We'd like to thank our supporters. This course is an interdisciplinary course, and it is supported with many supporters throughout the university. So I'd like to thank you so much. Without your generous support, we could not make this class possible. This class would not be possible. Also, as I was saying before, food literacy is a unique course in that it's co-led and it's an academic community partnership. I'm Winona Bynum. I'm the executive director of the Detroit Food Policy Council, and I'm the community co-lead. And I get to lead this amazing course with Dr. Margot Finn and Lily Fink Shapiro. And they are great to work with, amazing. We also make sure that food literacy is free and open to all the public. So we talked about that support. That's what makes it possible. And all classes are filmed and recorded. And so they're available on the Food Literacy for All website shortly after the class. Ways to engage. Since we can't be in the classroom together, we have different ways to engage. So you can go to the mural board. The link is in the chat. And put your favorite quote, or if you want to start a discussion about something you're hearing, feel free to do that. Also, there'll be multiple choice questions, poll questions throughout the class. So that's another way to participate. And then we ask if you want to tweet or put something on social media, you can use the hashtag that is displayed. So for the questions, there's time for Q&A. So there'll be a discussion and then there'll be some Q&A. Please make sure that you put all your questions for Q&A in the Q&A box and not in the chat. That way we're able to see them and make sure that they get addressed. So with that, I'd like to hand it off to Margot. I'm sorry, no, not Margot, to Lily to introduce.
That's all good, Winona. I know you're just trying to get me back for pranking you on the slide order, which I swear sometimes your slides have a mind of their own. I was not trying to set you up. Hey, everybody, thank you for being here. And I am so thrilled tonight to introduce our three panelists. So we invited three different people who operate small groceries in Michigan to join us, either who operate small groceries or who will soon operate small groceries in Michigan from three different cities. So we're talking about Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, and Detroit tonight. And our first panelist, Jason Bang, is the owner of Galleria Asian Market in Ann Arbor. And according to a Yelp review, maybe some of you have been there, Galleria Market is a really cool place that will magically transport you to the land of the morning calm and has a friendly staff that goes the extra mile to satisfy your needs. So Jason, you can give us a wave if you want to. And I'm also excited to introduce Alita Kelly, who launched a grocery store during the pandemic in 2020 in Grand Rapids. It's called Southeast Market, and it sources products first from Black, Brown, Indigenous, local, or women-led farms and businesses. And in 2021, Alita, I saw that you were recognized as one of the 40 under 40 in the Grand Rapids Business Journal. And she is a U of M alum and is working all kinds of cool projects with U of M students. Our third panelist, Raphael Wright, is an entrepreneur and an author from Detroit. And he's the founder of a group called Urban Plug L3C, which is a social investment company designed to invest in Detroit's inner city. And their first major effort has been to bring an inner city grocery store to Detroit, which is not quite open yet, but you will hear more about it during tonight's panel. So thank you all for being here. And I will pass it off to Margot to facilitate tonight's discussion.
Hey, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm really excited about this. I wanted to start just with a question for each of you about how you got started, what the initial vision was, what the community you were hoping to serve, when you got started. And I think maybe I'll go ahead and do it in the order that we introduced you guys, because then we've got chronologically the longer established, the more newly established, and the coming soon. So we'll kind of do that. So Jason, tell us a little bit about Galleria, how you got started, the vision.
Hey, so we're a Korean grocery store in Ann Arbor. We opened back in 2010 in May. And my father wanted to have his own building slash store. So he threw the entire family back into this thing. And it's a family business that I was debating if I should come back to work for or not. And well, I'm here, so I made that decision. And there was, like, if you ever been to our store, you can see it's a little bit different from like most of the other stores. It's a Korean grocery store that's not huge or small. It's medium sized, which is good or bad. And we try to focus mostly on Korean. And even though it says Asian on the moniker, but I don't know 48 countries, and I rather focus on what we can. And it sometimes makes people mad. They're like, "Hey, it says Asian." I'm like, "I know, but I can't afford to change the sign, so it's just Korean." And we do what we can, and at least I like to be upfront about things when what our limitations are, so that we don't set people up for different expectations. So hopefully you like it, and thank whoever made that Yelp review. I don't know what Kool-Aid you were drinking, but I appreciate it. And if you don't like us, then I'm sorry, but I've also gotten some bad reviews, and I have to live with it.
If for anybody who hasn't been into Galleria, it does feel like a slightly magical place walking in. It's just like clean and beautiful in this way that I don't tend to. Many grocery stores don't strike me as beautiful.
I keep bribing you with Ramune, and we'll go from there.
All right, Alita, tell us a little bit about your market, or how you got into this, what you were hoping to do with it.
Sure. So Southeast Market, sort of the breakdown that, oh, can you hear me?
Your internet was just going in and out a little bit, but it seems like it's stabilized.
Okay, hope that doesn't happen too much. So we opened as a response to COVID. It's something that I had been considering for several years as a serial entrepreneur. But really, COVID was the catalyst for us opening, as we were seeing dietary related illness and its impact on COVID rates. So it was just a really good time to support our community with some fresh, healthy food. We source first from Black, Brown, Indigenous, local, and female-led businesses and farms. Loss that Black farmers have seen over the last 100 years. We have some education programming, and we do a lot around urban agriculture.
That's fascinating. So you've kind of got these connections to a whole lot of different goals from the inception.
For sure, most certainly.
All right, Raphael, tell us a little bit about the market that you're opening, and maybe the journey to that. And I know you're opening this summer, so a little bit about that process.
Yes. So I made a shift to social entrepreneurship around 2015. Chasing money had always been a thing, but now I'm pursuing change. And I started, looking at neighborhoods that I grew up in and those around me. And I believe that we need to reimagine what those look like. And they start with healthy food. A community that can feed itself can lead itself to do whatever it wants. So grocery stores, anchoring businesses like grocery stores became my main focal point. So as Urban Plug is an umbrella company, neighborhood grocery is its foundational project. Every neighborhood that we go into, we have to address the food insecurity or desertness. I know that's not a word, but I just made it up. In these neighborhoods before we try to approach anything else. So that's what launched Neighborhood Grocery, which is an equity crowdfunded grocery store startup that will be moving into our first neighborhood this summer. We're in construction now. We're on the tail end of construction, and we'll be, hopefully opening immediately after. So, but the goal is to build an anchor And then amongst that, you know, around that anchor, other businesses or other initiatives that could address any issue that we want. And equity crowdfunding just gives that disruptive element, because I didn't inherit wealth. My family didn't inherit privilege either. So I can't go to a bank and say, hey, I need XYZ to, you know, feed my community. But I can use the social equity that I've built over time, along with just being able to tell my story, and I can absolutely, you know, raise some funds. 80% of our funds have come from crowdfunding, and we still rocking. So, you know, we'll be open in the summer, and, you know, hopefully we get to change some things in that neighborhood and any other neighborhood that wants us there.
Thank you guys all so much. And I guess to expand on that just a little bit, I think you each touched a little bit on what makes your stores, your markets different from some of the big chains, or, you know, what you're going to find walking into like a Kroger or a Meijer or something like that. But I want to maybe give you each a little bit of a chance to maybe expand on that kind of sense of like what, again, I think we heard a little bit about the ways that you're gesturing to involvement in communities and trying to do something a little bit beyond. And maybe I'll sweep from east to west this time and just bounce right back to Raphael, and then hit you each on kind of what makes you different, and how do you, what are maybe the things that you're doing as you set up, or that you did as you were setting up, to make sure that this was going to be a different kind of business than what is maybe already out there?
So I would start off by saying, when we approach different, it can't be from a standpoint of like, we have to be different so that we can be better than, in this, you know, Kroger, you got Meijer, you got Amazon with Whole Foods, you got Walmart, you have the thousands of dollar stores and dollar chains throughout the city. I will be lying to everyone on this Zoom and say that we'll be able to beat them profit-wise or anything like that. It's just very hard to. These are corporations. The one thing that these corporations don't provide or offer to the community is connection and culture. So bringing that makes us different, but it also gives a different agenda. You know, do I want to make money? Absolutely. But, you know, money is always cool, but change is better. So if I can shift the consciousness of the communities and the proximities where these stores will be, I'm okay with that. That's all the profit that I'll need. And I think approaching nutrition in a way that is cool. You know, I grew up in Detroit. It was always the cool thing to be fat, or it was always cool to eat cheeseburgers, drink pop, and everything else. It was never cool to eat a salad or drink water or exercise. And now we're in a community and a culture now that's promoting health a little bit better. So approaching the culture in a way that, you know, makes our product sexier to everybody is the way that we have been different. Outside of just cost and the offering as well, it's just the culture and the way that we've been able to tell the story that we all kind of familiar with, but we don't really think about. I didn't think about the subtleties of not having a grocery store in my community and how that would affect how my community operates until I became an adult. But as a kid, you don't think about any of that stuff. So our ability to tell that story, use social media tools that I didn't have growing up, the technologies that we have available to us, we're able to reach and connect with people in a way that we've never been able to before. And that's been helping us to open, and it'll definitely help us while we are open. And hopefully it keeps us running for a long time.
Thank you so much. That's exciting stuff. Alita, what about you? What are you, so you've certainly talked a little bit about sourcing and stuff like that, but yeah, what are the ways that you're trying to do something that might be different than what is already there?
Sure. So we were also crowdfunded to get started. And so the energy behind the project just feels different. It also really gets people invested in a different way. And so we have like a really strong following on social media here and for all our different initiatives in a way that wouldn't be possible, I think, with another type of store. Can you hear me?
There was a little break. There was a little break, but you came back. You're back now.
Okay, sorry about that. Another niche thing that we're able to do at Southeast Market is work with small producers that larger stores wouldn't give the time of day. So new farmers who might just have 30 bags of lettuce to sell, we're able to and make sure that we can share their story also. And so that's really important. We also have produce subscriptions at our store, which is similar to a CSA. I call it the approachable CSA because we're working with several different local farms. And then we're also providing items that are not local, things like bananas, mangoes, things people eat and they're familiar with. And that helps them to be able to have the energy to work with some items that may be more providing education through that process also. So that and our take on mutual aid as a grocery store. So all of our food, all of our produce and bread, dairy, milk, eggs is subsidized through a community powered program called Pay It Forward. And everybody receives the subsidy. So there's no if you pay with SNAP, you get the subsidy. It's just everyone gets it. And so it encourages everyone to pour into the subsidy program also. What our produce, buy one for someone else, and we mobilize that food in our community as well. And so I think that piece, our take on mutual aid, and working with small producers is really one of the best parts of having our market and calling the shots to do that, to be able to do that.
Did you guys create the Pay It Forward program? Is that yours, or is that part of some bigger thing you're plugged into?
It's not a bigger thing, but I'm noticing that there are grocers who are adopting or who have adopted that model. There's actually a space in Atlanta that uses the same language as Pay It Forward. So it's not unique, but it's not something that you see often.
Yeah, certainly not at any of the chains or anything like that. That's really cool. Thanks. Jason, tell us a little bit about it. You said something about not covering all 40 some odd countries of Asia, which I really appreciate. But is it just inventory that or primarily Korean and other Asian inventory that differentiates Galleria, or what do you see as being the kind of the difference in what Galleria offers?
Well, before I get to that, listening to you guys talk, I found it interesting that somehow we are the traditional store now. You guys are doing so much of the not, I guess, cutting edge type of thing and getting the local community involved in everything. I think it's really cool. And somehow just being in this part of this panel, I'm like, how did we shift from being this niche market to more traditional style of doing groceries? And I'm kind of kicking myself saying man, I should be doing some of the things that you guys are doing. So it's pretty good notes to take. And as for the store, I think we continue to optimize. And from just going through stuff, optimization actually it might be a dirty word, so to speak, because you want to optimize to be good, but then there are sacrifices to be made because you're optimized. So because we're trying to be more optimized as a Korean store, you're losing out on something that you would have from a traditional Asian store. That being said, though, because of the way the market's catering to different demographics, I can't really do a lot of cheaper Chinese goods that take up 100 per package. Because I don't know how to control it. And with some of the products that we have, if we know it's expiring, and since my mom is a really good Korean cook, she could kind of whip things up with the things that are expiring rather than what am I going to do with these bags of fermented beans, which are already by definition expired because they're fermented, but because it's got a date on it, customers are like, why is this expired? And it's just what it is. So, and it's, so we try to carry stuff, then try to sell it. If it doesn't sell the first time, then well, it's my fault for not being able to market it well. But if we continually get stuff that are expiring, then I can't blame anyone but myself. And we've had some products that I sell like 5 of within 3-month period. And then over the next 3 months, I have 5 people asking if we have that stuff. So that's why I become quote unquote optimized, and we stop carrying some of that. And it actually ends up cutting down quite a bit on labor hours and just trying to make things work. And whether people want to buy into it or not, but we call ourselves a mom and son shop because my mom and I run it. And so we try to be like as lean as a smaller hole in the wall store, but having bigger space actually allows us to not work as hard to cram stuff and play Tetris with all the different boxes that we have to make it fit. So I think the most important thing is whatever situation you're given, you come up with the best solution for the job. And to kind of iterate what I was thinking when Raphael was talking about his project was, when I was going to college, they were talking about how the marketing problem in the inner city of, you know, McDonald's and burgers being cool, like that's what they were marketing because that's where they were making the money. And the ramification is because some of the people thought it wasn't cool to be cooking at home and it was convenient to be eating these junk food, it's a bad cycle that repeats itself. But when I was listening to Raphael talk, I was like, dude, it's so great. I mean, it's got to be a ton of work, right? I mean, he says he's all about money and whatnot, but I'm sure he's got better initiative than just about going for the dollars. So doing that for the community and hopefully getting everybody involved, it's cool. I wish I could hear more about it and, you know, even offline, just talk more about it and see if there's anything that I could gain from you and then, you know, stuff like that. And same thing with what Alita's doing too. So
that's wonderful. I wanted to ask all of you, and because you're in different places, COVID, of course, affects you all differently, from having to respond to it, in your case, Jason, to starting in the midst of it, in Alita's case. And Raphael, your whole operation will in some ways be shaped by the way COVID is changing the whole food system in the world. So I just want to hear from a little from each of you about that. So Jason, how did you respond? What did you do? First in the first part of the lockdown, what's going on now? How has COVID transformed what the market looks like?
So with what we did, I hope nobody else follows in our financial track because we lost like 90% of our business. And it's because my mom is really into watching like Korean news and whatnot. And because of the way COVID spread into America, we're hearing all these things coming and we're just like, yeah, it's gonna make landfall soon. And the choice at the time was, well, we got to slow this thing down and maybe we're shut down for a little bit and let things work out and then open back up because we just didn't know enough. But the day before the state decided to shut everything down, or actually after the announcement was made, it's like, you know, maybe I'll come up with the third way of rather like, are we just going to be scared to open or just not open? And we decided to do contactless pickup, which was a good idea, I guess, but horrible in execution because we didn't have an online site and I had to deal with everything by hand. And we're trying to set up a thing where I drop products off outside and then have people pick up. Customers would drop off their credit cards and come up with this. And it was little too novel at the time. And even now it still is. But I was like, you know, it's all good until I get sick or my mom gets sick, and then we have to shut the whole thing down. And my miscalculation was in the fact that I was thinking we would be able to just rally up in like 3 months or so and then just get on the same page. Well, we're on year number 3 now, and we're still not on the same page. And the policy that I've adopted, and my mom's 100% behind it, is we're asking people to wear masks in the store. And when there was a mandate, of course, everyone was grumbling, but they complied. Now we're getting people, specific demographics of people. And this surprised me that there are a lot of older people that are like this, but they're like, why do you need masks? I'm like, you know, if you get sick, you guys are at the most risk. Like, but they believe in what they believe in. I respect them. But my analogy is when you go into, let's say, a Korean household and most of them will ask you to take your shoes off, you have a choice. You know, you could either choose to bring your muddy shoes into the house, but you're not because the owner's going to kick you out, or you comply and you'll be like, all right, we're good enough friends and whatever, my funky feet or whatever, it's come in. And that's the way I see it. But I've gotten F-bombs dropped on me, like, this is ridiculous. I've had people with COVID or that had COVID that have recovered, and they figure it's nothing. So they're like, what? You're making me wear masks? And then 5 minutes into the conversation, talking to them, they're like, yeah, I've had COVID. I'm like, dude, if you had it once already, kind of gotta help other people out too. And just because you're safe don't mean other people are gonna be so. But we're on different pages, and I really appreciate the fact that our customers, for the most part, respect our decision to comply with it and whatnot. But I've also gotten bad reviews and whatnot too. So it's you can't please everybody, is what I picked up in this business.
Yeah, that's fascinating to hear. Yeah, I guess what the response from people to the changing masking and everything else did. Did you get resistance too when you were fully closed and not opening? How were customers about that?
So yeah, everyone's a little different, but I've had some rumors started that we went out of business, and some people maybe like that because they kept on spreading that rumor. And I straight up gone like, dude, if you need to know, just call and ask, or like go find out for yourself, not come back 6 months later, be like, oh, good, you're still in business. And like, it's them appreciating it, but from my end, because I hear so much from different people, I'm like, how should I react to this? But there was that. And then I did have people that appreciated the fact that we're one of the few stores that were doing this. And it just goes to show the wide gamut of people will take things differently looking at the same situation. And I still have a customer who places orders via email and doesn't want to come into the store. And now it's slowly getting to a point like, wow, this harkens back to like what happened 2 years ago, but I respect her choice to not expose her kids and whatnot to it. And some people might think it's an overkill, and it potentially might be, but you don't really know. And my whole take with COVID is, I don't think like even Dr. Fauci knows all about it. So smarter people, they say, wiser people say, I don't know when they don't know, rather than, oh, I read this on Twitter, so I'm the smartest person in the world when it comes to COVID. But I think some people have issues trying to overcome that, not having that knowledge. And like, I'm perfectly fine with being not the smartest kid in the block. So we'll just go with it.
Alita, would you tell us a little bit about how, so I mean, you mentioned starting in some ways because of COVID, but how has the pandemic shaped, I guess, the way you operate, maybe logistical stuff, how you get food to people? Tell me about that.
Sure, we definitely have customers who don't want to come into the store. And so we had all of the,
oh shoot,
we made sure that we had all those things in place. Maybe this will help. We made sure to have all of those things in place as we got started. So there was a lot that we were able to do successfully in launching because we had the lens of COVID to get started. With our crowdfunding, I feel like it was beautiful to see the community. It was really hard, like accepting money from people in a time where everyone was so strapped financially. And so I think it just added to like our sense of responsibility, to do well and to make sure that we could launch the market well with those dollars. As far as COVID relief funding, we weren't eligible for any of it just because we started after COVID. So I think there was also this perception from some folks that we were successful and able to launch but we like just received our first COVID relief support. Yeah, just like last week actually. So.
Oh wow, that feels really late.
Well, we're still dealing with COVID, so there's still this funding that's coming down the line.
Oh yeah, but late for it to just like for the first, yeah.
Oh,
I would have, of course. I'm with the other people who would have expected it to happen earlier for you.
For sure.
Raphael, how do you think that starting a grocery in the aftermath of COVID is going to be shaped by that? What do you think might be different for you?
Well, off the top of my head, I can remember all of the ambitious blueprints I had in my head on how this store would look, how it would flow, etc. Everything got torn up and just thrown in the air because the flow of traffic in stores have changed, not just in food businesses, but in retail in general. Foot traffic, which has been the traditional, eyeball test for a grocery store or supermarket, just non-existent anymore because you have curbside pickup and delivery and contactless pickup, things like that. So just reimagine how we can be effective. And in essence, is meeting people where they are. That's really been something that's been keeping me up at night. In reality, I started this project in 2016, and it had been a struggle once again in a community that is used to eating a certain type of way and promoting health or promoting a grocery store in general. This wasn't the sexiest topic amongst my generation of people, but as anyone that watches Marvel movies, I know we've seen that phrase on like Twitter or something. They say Thanos was right. When the pandemic started, I started seeing a lot of Raphael was right. And please excuse me, I got a 4-year-old who likes to just play and stump and stuff. But people took a different appreciation towards the efforts that I had started so many years ago and so many others as well, because we were now in a space to where we were literally without. And people were so accustomed to going to a grocery store and finding ground beef, sausage, whatever, and it was no longer present. So now that we are in a space to where we are without, efforts like mine and others make all the sense in the world. So we have been able to really take advantage of that, along with just working and partnering with other people who are in the same fight as us. So I started an urban garden at the start of the pandemic, right after it started, like 5 minutes from the store. That's helping us meet people where they are as we currently stand, as well as stocking our store once it's open. I activate a lot of my wholesale relationships now so that we can start delivering food and just showing people what we will be doing in the midst of the store being built. So it was a good stimulus for us, but also the community grew to appreciate the work that we were doing. So as far as how it's shaping the store, I think that I kind of hold the crystal ball to kind of control. I can tell people how I want the flow to look, be, whatever in the space because of this newfound like interest, but just the appreciation. So if I say, hey, I want 500 people in the space, let's turn it up, I think that can happen. If I say, hey, let's stay safe and let's, be mindful of those that are worried about COVID, we have delivery trucks, whatever, I think we can do that too. So I think that we are in a real good space in the opening. Now, keeping ourselves open and solving above water, that's a totally different conversation. But I think opening will be able to really just kind of, control the board as opposed to obeying the fight that's given to us. We still have challenges like supply, labor, all those things will always be an issue. But I think that at this point, the social equity that we have built, when we say go, people will go. When we say stop, people will stop. So that's a good thing. But we have to really, be, mindful and, respectful, but overall just, pay it forward in the ways that we know we need to. Let's stay within integrity. Let's honor all of the love and support that we've received, and let's pay it forward in the best way possible. So I appreciate the trust that we've gotten overall, and I think that we will really be able to just create whatever store we want. Right now, we're just looking for a store that's super duper convenient, affordable as much as we can as far as like price. Everyday pricing has been tossed out of the window in all businesses, especially food, but making sure that we are offering what people want, making sure that we're available to, give it to them in ways they want to be given. And just, being able to edutain, as I say, educate and entertain. We want this space to be fun, welcoming, informative, but ours. So, but I think, I got real wordy with the answer, but I think in the end, my ability to have a conversation with my neighbors has really been advantageous to me. And I think that I'll be able to build a store that is very them. And I'll be able to maneuver in whatever ways I need to and just be there in whatever way they need me to be.
Yeah, I think I get a real sense of the way that social equity has really shaped everything about the store and the project. And I want to ask about the supply chain issues in just a second that you mentioned, but we've got a poll question for people about their shopping during COVID. So I think we want to throw that one out. And yeah, just the pretty simple, did the pandemic change the way you get groceries? I'm going to be surprised if there's very many people who say no, but go ahead and we'll have that started. Is it running? I see the question, but I don't know if I see responses.
It's running.
Okay, good deal. All right, I'll let that run for a second. Okay, but about those supply chain issues, oh gosh, who do I want to start with? I'll start with Alita this time. Everybody's talking about supply chain concerns. How has that affected your market? How do you respond to things when is being smaller? Does it make it so that people don't expect you to have everything anyway, and that's okay? Or has it been a real headache? What options do you have when there's something that you're used to being able to get in and it just doesn't show up?
Sure. So for us, we don't have the same things in the store at, all the time. But as far as the prices going up and really showing up in an area that has been underinvested in, that has a lot of low and middle income folks, affordability is so important. And so our pay it forward subsidy, originally that was just for produce from Black and brown farms. As we're seeing the price of food increase, we've moved to apply the subsidy to all of our produce. And truly, it's not sustainable because, it's a lot of food. But we haven't run out of money yet. And I'm so grateful for that. We're, marketing like community buy-in to this program, but as a smaller store, we're operating out of 750 square feet. We don't have the purchasing power that how to use mutual aid as a vehicle to ensure that we're still relevant when it comes to our neighbors getting the food that they need.
It's really interesting to hear about, that interaction between mutual aid, like the Pay It Forward program, and supply chain issues, and how that can address some of the price, I guess, well, I want to say fluctuation, but it kind of only goes one way.
Sure, but like avocados right now are so expensive, and so like sometimes we'll have avocados and sometimes we won't, and that's just the
reality
state of the supply chain. I think we have more agility in that area as a small grocer to do things like that, where folks might be upset if they went to Meijer or Walmart and don't see the avocados. I'm not sure.
What about you, Jason? Have you 20% of people said the pandemic didn't change the way they got groceries. I'm impressed. But for about 80% of our people, pandemic changed the way they got groceries in some way. Yeah, Jason, supply chain issues, especially recently, have they been affecting you, and how do you respond to them? What do you do about that?
Just take my margins and explain to customers, hey, this is what it is. And two things that work for us. One is the fact that we're a niche market, and also the fact that I've been sort of brainwashing customers as we're not a one-stop shop. Produce has been a huge problem for us, and this is my thoughts on it. We figured one of the reasons why bigger grocery chains have less fluctuation is probably because they're contracted, whereas our prices are spot. And one of the worst was we had spinach for $6 at one point. And we're like, dude, I can't sell it for $6. And customers, some of them are like, wait, how much? I'm like, well, I could give it to you for $5.50. We're like cutting into it. But even at that point, I had to do what we could. But it just became a thing of, just get them over at Meijer or Whole Foods because you're going to shop over there. And because the fact that it's niche, it's less impacted, but at the same time, that's not a good enough excuse. The thing that I've been running into is we order stuff and our order list is now a wish list. Whatever shows up, shows up. And some of the snacks that we have went up 50%. And I straight up tell customers, it kind of sucks because you tell them that price has gone up and you might lose that sale. But I figure we're not a fly by night. So let them know that this is a situation and some people understand. And if they can't, then well, I'm sure they'll understand within 2 weeks because it's not just us that's jacking up the price, it's everyone else. And the other little consolation that I have, and I also tell this to customers, is if you find it cheaper somewhere else, go buy it over there because they got it when it was cheap. Like, unless they actually care about their margins and everything, their prices will go up because everything has gone up. And one other thing that I found was really interesting, I don't want to take up too much time, but shipping wise, I had frozen shipments from Chicago or LA to Chicago used to be $6,000 per container. It was 28,000 at one point and climbing. And so just on that, without any of the raw material prices going up, every bag of something from that company went up $1 at least. Bigger bag went up $2 just on shipping. And so it just, after a while, you're looking at the numbers and the way it jumps, you just laugh at it and you go, hey, you know, at least we're making a couple dollars and we're getting by. At least, like right now isn't the time to thrive, it's to kind of hold up and just be a little chipmunk and be like, hey, it's snowstorming outside. I'm just gonna eat the nuts that we got and then see how it goes. Unfortunately, it's 2 years plus, so it's kind of rough, but you know, I'm here. You guys invited me to actually talk because our store's still open. So hopefully we'll be here next year. We'll see how it goes.
At least surviving. Raphael, I know that you're not like, you know, open yet, but how are supply chain kind of things affecting you, or how are you planning for how you're going to address that? How does somebody who's like getting started in this environment think about how to address those kinds of things?
I get a little bit of an advantage by not being open because I get to hear the horror stories of everybody that is currently open, and I get a chance to, you know, improvise, maneuver, come up with different solutions. And like right now, being more of a mobile solution and a more prepared solution, we have been just marketing to people that want to have prepared food and the new customers. So interesting that you have a poll. You know, close to 80% of folks said that, you know, they have changed the way that they shop for groceries. I'm pretty sure a decent amount of those poll, you know, people have subscribed to that poll, have become what I call the convenient customer that shop online, that, you know, they DoorDash, Uber Eats, things of that nature. I started another business during the pandemic called Taste of Diaspora, which was is a mutual aid food agency that helps Black-owned food business while celebrating Black contributions to American cuisine. And we did shoebox lunches, replicating the old shoebox lunch from the Jim Crow era. And we partnered with different food makers, food companies, et cetera. And we, you know, pretty much create like a CSA of prepared food. All in efforts to, like, you know, encourage people to expand their palate so that we can actually take advantage of stuff that is available but may not be typically bought in a store. So, you know, for me, for example, I didn't grow up eating like couscous. However, I work with 2 or 3 different food businesses that's all they cook, and it's in wide supply. So we've just been encouraging people to, you know, expand your palate a little bit, try something new. You know, talk about health, talk about culture, again, education, and it's been helping so that we can take advantage of the supply that is there. But it's affecting everybody, you know, everyone, you know, is struggling to get supply, keep it in a place where it's affordable for everybody. So, you know, transportation is affecting the way that food is coming here, and that's going to affect the price. What's available. As an urban gardener, we started gardening commercially as a response to the thousands of gardens, the thousands of farmers that have thousands of acres of land, and, that food is attached to maybe the meat supply that was a part of the problem that started COVID-19 in the first place. And thousands of acres of crops just had to get turned over because everything stopped. So being a local, option to grow food that helps with the supply a bit. We can grow some things and we can supply some things, work with other local urban gardens. I mean, we had like 1,200 urban gardens before the pandemic or something like that, and then it went to close to 2,000. So it's, people are getting involved to help these issues. So those are the ways that you hedge it. Those are the ways that I've been engaging it, and the ways that I've been looking to take advantage when I do open. But it's been scary looking at, the difference of, vendoring sheets. And like Jay just said, it's a wish list. Those things that have been on those sheets, they're just not there. And you hope they're there at some point, but, as the weeks turn over, that stuff is just still not available. So, this is the time where we obey the fight, and whatever is there available for us, we just got to get a little inventive, a little creative, and, advertising that stuff, presenting it in a way, or just leaving it alone and, just dealing with what you can. But it's definitely been a scary thing. One of the other things that keep me up at night, but we are already here, so we got to keep going.
Thanks for that. Yeah, and thinking about what you just brought up about the kind of, what all of you have spoken to, of how some of these things may have increased or affected things like how much food gets thrown out or wasted, if there's either too much that people can't afford the prices all of a sudden, and so the inventory doesn't go. Maybe I'll throw it. And the pandemic has affected the food waste. Oh, wow, were we not recording before? Shoot. Okay, so we've got our food waste poll, and people are trying to figure out how much of the US food supply is wasted. And then I think I need to ask you, Alita, too. I know that this stat can change depending on who's counting and what they're counting. So just if you have so we're asking them about how much of the food supply is wasted, and then you'll tell us the answer and maybe where it comes from, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up food waste because it was just so alarming to see some of the food waste that was happening while people were so hungry, or when people didn't have the means to buy this food. It just didn't make sense. And so for us, we really wanted to make sure that we had as little waste as possible. And so with our produce subscriptions, that really helped us to have a steady flow of produce in, produce out, produce that we're not able to mobilize. Any produce that we're not able to mobilize, we're feeding to worms. And then that's turned into soil that we also sell in the store. So that's been a really cool way for us to operate in a sustainable way. And I hope that in the future, we can see some more policy around holding businesses accountable for their waste. I know there's, France is really good with ensuring that grocery stores don't just have free reign to trash all this stuff and write it off, So yeah, I think that was one really cool way that we were able to address food waste. And it also brings in, a lot of customers that are cognizant of things like that. We also are a site for 50 households to bring their compost in the community. So as a location, as an address, we're able to really divert thousands of pounds of food from the landfill.
That's really cool. And then are you redistributing it to the farms that you work with, I imagine, or?
The compost?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so we work with a vermicompost company called Wormies. So we're not actually managing all of the compost operation.
That's fun. So I think the plurality of respondents got the stat right. I think 30 to 40% was what we were looking for, and it looks like 54% got that right. Do you happen to know where that particular? I've heard slightly different. Sometimes I hear estimates as high as 50%. And my understanding is that some of that depends on what gets counted, because things like things that go into compost or things that get reused in other places sometimes do and sometimes don't get counted as food waste. But 30 to 40%. And do you remember where that particular? I can probably look it up.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry, I
okay.
don't.
No, don't worry about it. Sorry. Sorry. Being a teacher. All right. Jason, you thinking about things like, when the spinach goes up to $6, or whatever else, do you find that there's more food waste being generated, especially with kind of the price fluctuations and supply chain issues, or are you not seeing much of a change in how that works at your market?
Well, at our store, we try to, if we see shrink, try not to order those again or just reduce and see. And I think just getting used to telling customers, oh, I'm sorry, we're sold out. And because we get shipments from Chicago on Tuesdays and sometimes on Thursdays, letting them know by the weekend, we might not have certain products like sprouts. It doesn't really train all the customers, but allows some customers to come in earlier in the week so that you get fresher stuff. And so over time, there isn't like a direct feedback, but we just see it as, all right, we didn't have as much people looking for things that were sold out of, or we had too much stuff left over we couldn't carry over. So it's just trial and error, and it's kind of a brute force way of doing it, but that's just been what's been done. And excuse me, one of the services that we took advantage of was food gatherers, for things that were expiring and the sell-by dates. But the stat is ridiculous, right? Like 40%-ish products are being thrown away. But at the same time, I feel like how much of that is due to the fact that the general public isn't as well educated on sell-by dates and expiration dates? Because there was an article saying about sell-by dates and such, posted up on my Facebook page, and I got feedback saying, hey, you shouldn't be putting that stuff out there because you look like a store that sells NR4 expired stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. Like, may no good deed go unpunished. And like, why would you introduce things for betterment of others and education when two people could be pissed and that could reflect badly on your store? And I mean, I try to not care as much about it because if it reaches 8 people and have 2 people that are angry, but over time, it kind of get, all right, why would I go out of my way? And so, but I try to be, because the fact that I run this as a mom and son shop, try to talk to customers about things and explain. Unfortunately, the feedback is, I don't know if they're like really into it or like, oh, there he goes again. So it's, but I got to do what I can to educate. And my little stance is, because it's food that's not familiar for a lot of people, maybe it might give them interest and letting them know about stuff. And it's a weird way to run business, but I think more information and better educated customers will be better customers, and even at the detriment of potentially losing that sale that day because of certain things. And there's certain products, because I had the misfortune of reading some books that deal with crappy foods. Once I know, I can't like knowingly sell crap to people. So I tell people that like, hey, these things might not be the best. It doesn't sell in Europe because blah, blah, blah. And that's why we don't carry it. And I think I just over time become more emboldened to stand up for what I think is right in the face of potentially losing business, because I sleep a little bit better at night. And same thing with the whole COVID way we dealt with it. We lost 90% of our sales, but I slept better at night because even if I was coughing, I was completely socially isolated. So I wasn't getting sick, but it still hurt losing 90% of your sales. Like, slept better, but like, my bed's getting thinner. So yeah, what can you do?
Yeah, all of those dilemmas. Raphael, I wonder if food waste is a concern you're hearing from the community that you're trying to serve, and if there's things that you're planning on doing, or things that you can tap into, like food gatherers in Washtenaw County, where things that might not be sellable can be redistributed in some way or reused, or what the plans are for food waste kind of management.
Oh yeah, it's a huge concern, especially in my community. I look back at growing up, my mother, aunts, grandmother, they all cooked. So not much was wasted in my household. As people got busier, and that's one of the things associated with food insecurity. it's not always money, and not being able to afford food is time. So, oftentimes people buy a lot of stuff and then they work ungodly hours and they come home and then they just tired. Or, people buy a lot of stuff because of, there's real subtle things to think about. Like, the first of the year comes around, it's new year, new me. And then you start, I'm gonna hit the gym and I'm gonna do blah, 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 blah. And you go to the grocery store, you buy a bunch of stuff, and it all goes to waste because you had no real plan or mechanics to how to cook that food, store it, etc. So education is paramount. You know what I'm saying? It starts with education. One of companies that I do work with a lot is Make Food Not Waste. That educates people on, not only is it a food rescue organization, but they distribute information on how to take something that's in your refrigerator, it's about to go bad. This is what you can whip up with it, And I think that, again, going back to culture, the culture of people that typically follow me, that I'm typically around, they are not really conscious of how urgent of times we live in. They are not really aware that you are, one virus, you are one case away from poverty. Like when the pandemic started, people have no idea how many people were, 36K and uppers, and they went under the poverty line because Instagram only show you the best of the best people. So people only smiling and only showing their car and blah, 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 and they're really struggling. So being in the food side of things, you really see it. You see, as we deliver food and groceries to people, how many people are on food stamps and how that spiked. So we get to see, we know. So the education is pretty much where it starts. And then from there, there's just several ways that you can approach how to, combat food waste. We do have compost. We compost at my urban garden. But you got like Make Food Not Waste that, distribute information on ways that you can cook things. Got different YouTube videos. There's different ways that you can educate people. I think that's just paramount. And that's just the start, because food waste is it's ridiculous in a good time. But right now we're in very, weird and bizarre times with the pandemic and other things that's happening. And food waste is increasing, where you would believe that people would be a little bit more conscious and a little bit more careful how they spend their dollar. I think looking on, like, for example, Instagram, and is that the unemployment and the PPP loan fraud it went rampant in, communities that I come from. So it was just a lot of waste, not just food. It was overconsumption in so many other different departments that people just wasn't conscious of what they were doing with their money. But as that money squeezes out and that's no longer available, people just naturally tend to be a little bit more strategic with their purchases, and it always starts with food. So I think there's just gonna be a natural change. How much, we'll never know, and I don't think statistics will ever be able to capture. But I think naturally you'll just see more and more people wanting to combat food waste on their own, and it just kind of spread, and then we'll be able to educate and set resources out for folks that want to combat it as well. But that was just a subtle observation. It's just looking at, just like when I went into the neighborhood, I seen a question in the Q&A about like what metrics or things that I pay attention to when looking for a neighborhood. I remember going in trash cans and looking to see what people were buying and eating. You go into a neighborhood and the entire block got McDonald's bags in their garbage. Might not be the best place to open up a space. But that is the same with observing, people with food waste, or, what meats they want to purchase. You just got to be a little bit more observant of the customer. The closer you are to them, you'll see. And I do see that there are people that are just naturally shifting to want to waste less food and be more effective with what they purchase. So I see that, and I hope that it increases and it only gets better.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate the idea of a grocery store as a place. I think all of you have touched on this idea that it can be a place to, a site for education, a site to distribute information as well as not just food. I think we actually have a question about, do we have a question about frequency of shopping? Can we drop that? I think it's our third and last. Yep. How often? So it particularly, I don't know how many people are going to be shopping every day, but at least a couple of times a month, most people probably have a contact with this institution. And if it's a community institution, that's going to be different than if it's an institution that's not part of their community. I do want to, we should start turning to, I should start turning to, yeah, we've got some great questions in the Q&A, so I will turn to those. And Raphael already started to answer this, so, well, maybe I'll come back to that in a minute, but a question for Alita. What are your plans once the pandemic is no longer an overwhelming consideration? Oh no, did she go away? Alita, we're...
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Turned off the video because I didn't hear.
Yeah, no, that's why I assumed your internet was going out. Here, let me say it again. So somebody's asking, what are your plans once the pandemic is no longer an overwhelming consideration?
Sure, we're moving forward full force right now. So I think that we're already living into that, and that continue to build out the process for is being able to be a better e-commerce option for people. But with grocery, we have so many products. It's really a wild task to get them all up online. But we're trying. So that's the future. I mean, we have to move that way.
I'm wondering, are you contracting with somebody to do that, or are you trying to build your own website for your e-commerce?
It's integrated with our point of sale system. So it's really just about keeping up on inventory.
Interesting. Yeah, so people don't order things that aren't there. Somebody mentioned that they were very grateful to, okay, so we've got, the poll is done. So it looks like most people are shopping either weekly or every 2 weeks. And then, you know, kind of a nice bell curve. So most people are shopping about every week or every 2 weeks. So that is a lot of contact with this institution. A review of Galleria mentioning that there's a special brand of chili oil that most grocery stores don't carry, but he found 4 different kinds in your store. So very grateful for that. A question from Matthew Young. Are large corporations trying to co-opt or mimic the community-centered goals and language of independent and small grocers? Do you see that happening with larger stores maybe trying to talk about some of the things that you guys have mentioned regarding social equity, mutual aid, community involvement? And if so, does that pose a threat to the survival of truly community-driven independent grocers? I wonder and maybe if any, I'll throw that out to anybody who wants to respond to it, whether or not you see bigger chains using the kinds of language and I think you all started by talking about the stories that you each have to tell. And I wonder if there's any of that going on with the bigger chains, if anybody has seen that. I could direct that to somebody, but I kind of don't know if anybody has seen examples.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing I did observe. As far as mimicking, one thing that you didn't see in any supermarket or big box store was hyper local anything. It was hard to get your product in any store that wasn't a local store. Now you see the river I'm losing the River Place Market or whatever, the new Myers that opened on Jefferson. It is super hyper local in regards to products that they have in the space, which is very smart and effective. And I think that the conversations that like Baba Maliki Kini has been having for I don't know how long, and then when I come along and others come along and have that conversation about hyper localness, now all of a sudden you see those big stores, Rivertown, thank you. You start to see those things happening. So as you see social initiatives and causes being spearheaded with local grocers and any business for that matter, you're gonna always see some type of corporate response to it. Is it still in our mimicking? In essence, not really, because we all are here for the same thing, that's to feed people. So, and we're in essence feeding people life at the end of the day. So it's not really stealing, as everybody's doing their duty. Some people have a bigger reach and opportunity to be effective than others, but nonetheless, we all should be on that agenda. But yeah, those are things that I have seen mimic for sure. The hyper local approach and maybe colors in the store, stuff like that. Overall, stores is getting smaller. That's something that's been mimicked from bigger spaces as well. Because at the end of the day, the quintessential grocery store in Detroit has always been 15 to 17,000 square feet. And then when you get into supermarkets, they're even bigger. But now everybody is shrinking because everyone wants to restore that local market feel, even if it is a corporation. So there's a lot of mimicking going on, just depending on where you look, and probably see it in every aspect of social approach with our businesses.
Yeah, I wonder, Alita, go ahead.
Sure. We've been approached by large chains asking us to share our model with them, asking, how we've been successful as far as getting so much community buy-in in such a little time being open. And so that told me that they felt a threat. It seemed like they wanted free consulting on how they could take what we've done so they could replicate it. And I agree with Raphael, there's a space for all of us to do this work, but what we're doing can never be replicated by corporate America. Just being centered, community-centered, people-powered, people-focused. I think the way that we operate, as much as they want to use that language, there's no way that a huge chain could ever do the things that we do. So I don't really feel threatened by that.
Yeah, Jason, I wonder, I guess in some ways this maybe is a question that you had to deal with earlier even than the more recent stuff with maybe the diversification of ingredients, Korean ingredients and others at other stores. Did that, was that a kind of concern for you? And even when, and your family, when starting the store, was there a sense of like, if Meijer and Kroger and all of that start to carry a whole lot more Korean ingredients, is that an existential threat for you?
So it's where you draw the line in the sand of your selfishness, because in the grand scope of things, if Korean products can be sold at these giant stores and with enough expertise, then that's great for the culture. Sucks for the store owner, but it's great for the culture. But it's a matter of how do you cope with the changing situations, because is my identity based just on the fact that I'm a Korean grocery store and this is it? And you could only get Korean stuff through me versus actually going to these other stores and get it. And I feel like for a lot of these corporate stores, if they see a new revenue stream, they'll be like, oh, we'll jump on it. And unfortunately, their practice tends to be, we're going to throw money at it because that looks attractive and we'll bring some people over. But the fallout happens about 3 to 6 months later when the expiration dates show up, and now you got a bunch of stuff that are shrink. And we've seen cases where random dudes that are like 6'3" in suits and tie, two Caucasian guys, just show up in the store and they have a clipboard and they start writing stuff down. Like, what store are you from? It's like, but they're benchmarking, and it's kind of one of those things where you seems underhanded and you shouldn't, but then how else are you going to learn new things? And it's a big, like, the toughest part is even the vendors themselves have to find new revenue streams. So they want to get into these other markets, but do they want to abandon their traditional base of the ethnic stores? And I don't have an answer for it. And of course, from my point of view, yeah, I don't want them to go anywhere else, but for everybody else and for ease of use in getting the products, it would be better that way. But the problem that comes up with a lot of these, and I think with the other panelists too, even if they try to benchmark, unless they know what their core competencies are, and if it jives with their model, it's not going to work. Like, you could mimic it, but people are very good at spotting fakes. But at the same time, if it's enough convenience and you get it to work, it works. And I think I'm bred a little differently in that I have customers come in and they claim they would never shop at Amazon. They would only shop local. But I'm like, it's great that you want to support us and support local stores, but you also got to be able to realize certain things are better to be purchased online. And it's just, it mimics, or it just works both ways. And then there's also the Costco issue where some of the products that we sell, like I had a customer angry at me for like, this is so much cheaper at Costco. I'm like, oh, really? And then I went and looked, and the problem with Costco is when they have it in store, it's really cheap, but then it's one and out. So next time I get that situation, I'm like, hey, let me know so I could go buy some over there because it's cheaper than my cost. And I could be angry about it, but it's just like yelling at the sky for why are you snowing so much today, Michigan? Like, there's nothing you could do about it. But knowing the situation, you cope with it, and you got to figure out what you could benchmark and what you can do for your customers that you bring to the table. And of course, it's a lot more work, but the fact that you're a smaller store, more independent, means you have that speed advantage versus the big corporations who are slow to react. And of course, once you get hit by it, it kind of hurts. So you got to see what works for you. And on a daily basis, like, I don't even know how this is a compliment, but I have customers that come in and say, oh, your store's clean and you smile at people. Well, it's tough to smile with a mask on these days. But I'm like, how the hell is that a compliment? Like, why don't other stores do this? But if they don't, that's my advantage. And so I got to do what I can and try to communicate with people. Of course, the double-edged sword of it is sometimes you talk too much and you piss off people that you might have not otherwise. So every interaction has its own risk. But I feel like over time, your store shapes not because of your will, but with interactions with your customers. So you deal with what you can, and there's always going to be one issue or another, but it's just a matter of how do you cope with it when things happen, when crap hits the fan. And it's just, I don't know, it rains sometimes. You got to roll with it.
Thank you. Someone is asking what tips you all have for people who might be interested in starting similar grocery stores, perhaps in other parts of the country. What lessons might you impart to somebody else who's trying to get into this game? And maybe I'll start with Raphael.
So many. I think one that I had to learn the hard way, and I learned very frequently, was never to fall in love with an area or a space. That you go into a neighborhood because you see a building, and that building is everything you need it to be, but the area just will not support that dream. You have to be willing and you have to be able to go anywhere else. And then ultimately saying, just go where you're welcome with an offering like a grocery store. Every neighborhood is not the same. Every need is not the same in every neighborhood. Some neighborhoods need a niche market. Some need all full service. You have to be able to obey that fight. And I've went to several neighborhoods that I just couldn't leave the area because I love the building so much, but the area just wasn't for me. So just don't fall in love with a space and just follow the numbers. The numbers will give you so much information that you need. So follow the numbers, don't fall in love with a particular area, and go where you're welcome. And it will be a lot of easier times in this hard battle of opening the store and keeping it open.
Alita, any advice for people trying to, it sounds like Meyer is already trying to get, or stores are already trying to get free consulting out of you, but for other people.
Sure. So I would say to make sure that you are building a really great team. You can't do it all by yourself. I have an amazing business partner, Kara DeWitt, and really none of this is possible unless like she came on board to jump into this, to run into this fire. So I think that is really the biggest thing. And also, once you've decided on a location, it's really important to just get the community feedback. So for us, I live in the area of my store, and speaking to my neighbors around, what types of foods they want to see in the store. That relational aspect is so important with smaller stores. And so you really have to pour into relationship building with your customers.
And someone just has a quick, while I got you, that what point of sale system do you use? Someone is asking about your.
We use ShopKeep.
Good technical.
But I think we'll be switching actually.
Oh, do you know what you're switching to?
We're playing around with a few different options. So we're trying to find the best way to, like I was mentioning before, that e-commerce integration is just so important. So finding the best system that allows for that.
Yeah, don't fall into the trap of free consulting there.
No.
But what about you, Jason? What advice would you give to somebody who's trying to start a small, a small or mid-sized or niche grocery, however we want to classify?
Want to buy our store? No, I have jokingly say that, but I feel like commitment to it and then commitment to it is so important. It's there are a lot of people that I want to, even customers that I talk to sometimes, people that work 9 to 5. Sometimes some people love it, but most people don't like it, and they think being my own boss is the best way to do it. And I used to freelance out in Korea, and if you freelance and you do the business for yourself, it turns out every single person you run into is your boss. I mean, you could pretend like you're the boss, but you won't be doing much. And so it's not something that I would totally push for, that you start your business, but if you have the passion for it, you have to have the legs for it too, because it's not an easy process. And I don't know the exact statistic because it fluctuates, but they do say that within first year, so much of the new businesses go out of business. And then within 5 years, most of them don't survive. And thank goodness we're still here, we're in our 12th year, but it's not something to take lightly. But if you feel that there is the niche for it and you could do it, and like my mom, when she first started doing this, she slept like 3 hours a night, and it's just ridiculous. And you just gotta, it's the man hours that you put in, it's the effort that you put in to be successful. And if you just want to punch in, punch out, it might not be as successful as it is. So it's I don't want to rain on someone's parade and wanting to do this, but it's not all rainbows. And it's I mean, I talk to different customers. Sometimes on Facebook I put up random crappy things because it's kind of frustrating times. But on the flip side, it can be very rewarding too. Like when we reopened to the public, because for 15 months we didn't let anybody into the store. I got cards and I got people saying like, "Thank you so much for opening again." And I'm like, dude, I just sell, well, according to the title, sell kimchi to you. Like, what did we do to deserve this? You're the customers that come in and you're spending your hard-earned money to try something new. And of course, it's typically healthier stuff, and that's great. But it's just outpouring that I didn't even expect, and I don't think I even deserve, but really appreciate it because of it. And so those are the rewards you get, but it's definitely not road paved with rose petals and going that way. So think about it. But that being said, don't listen to other people. Like, you ask for advice, people will tell you what they think that should work for you. It's BS. Like, you got to see your angle. You got to do what you do, because if it seems to be a successful thing, other people will be doing it. But it's what you're doing, and you got to do what you gotta. And this one thing that really got me when I was younger is fail forward fast. Like, instead of just sitting on your butt and saying like, "Oh, you're gonna do this," well, I've been like, "Oh, I'm gonna make YouTube videos." It's been years. I should fail and just be embarrassed by it, but I haven't done it. Maybe when this video goes up on YouTube, I'll be like, but you just gotta just go do it. And then instead of picking out like all the ins and outs, go experience it. And then when the new obstacle shows up, you figure out. Because I joke around that when I bag stuff in the store, I'm playing Tetris, but I feel like it's always a puzzle solving thing. You run into this one problem, and then you have to ask yourself, hey, is this something that I want to challenge and want to overcome, or am I just going to roll over? And you have to appreciate that, and you have to overcome it, and then you come up with new challenges. And so I don't know, it's might be a good advice, crappy advice, but good luck. See how it goes.
We are getting towards the end of our time, so I wanted to see if anybody has last comments before I turn it over to, I think, Lily for some final announcements. Did any of you have any concluding thoughts before we do some kind of wrap up stuff? No. Thank you all so much for being here. And I can turn it back over to, I think Lily is taking us out.
Hey everybody. Oh, I didn't realize the sun went down. Sorry, my room is very dark. All right, here, I'll turn off my video, but here's what we got for you. Next week, Dr. Anthony Hatch, Metabolism Cages for New World Animals, Large and Small, is going to be with us. So please join us for that. We only have a couple sessions left. And then also this Saturday, I just want to make one more announcement, both for students and for the Open to the Community is an event called Rooting for Change. And I believe it's an all-day thing, or a lot of the day for students. And then at 6 p.m. it's open to the community for a series of tiny talks.